Hello golfers, PGA teaching professional Todd Kolb, Director of Instruction for US Golf TV and the Todd Kolb Golf Academy. And today I'm talking about the 5 best tips for amateur golfers. Now believe it or not, if you know these 5 tips, these 5 things that I'm going to tell you, you could literally probably give 90% of the golf lessons that I give on a regular basis. Now the best part is after we finish up these 5 tips, not only are you going to understand the key concepts to playing good golf and getting started correctly, but at the end, I'm going to give you a nice tip on how to kind of tie all this together so you can practice it no matter where you're at. So, believe it or not, like I said earlier, the common mistakes that golfers make, really, whether you're a beginner or even a touring professional, they kind of fall into a couple of key categories. So, we're going to talk about 2 key tips with the grip. We're going to talk about a key setup concept, and then I'm going to give you 2 great tips on the takeaway. And at the end of the day, we're going to have 5 things. If you can do these 5 things, you're going to be well on your way to playing better golf. So let's dive into it. The first one here is on the grip. Now, when we talk about the grip, everybody knows the grip is not super exciting, but it is an integral part of being able to swing the golf club correctly. So I want to give you 2 things to look for, because these are 2 things that I see a lot of recreation golfers, amateur golfers, a mistake they make on a regular basis. So the first thing that it has to do is where they position the club in their hand. Now a lot of golfers, when they first grab the golf club, position the club in their palm. Now sadly, when they do this, it inhibits them from being able to swing the club and leverage the club and really create some club head speed. So you want to feel like you're holding the club basically in the fingers. Now here's how you can guarantee it. So when you position your lead hand, which for me is my left hand, on the golf club, you're going to want the pad to go on top, and you're going to run it diagonal across the hand so that it exits through the middle of your index finger. Now, simply, you'll know it's correct if you can balance it like I'm doing right here, where it's on the pads on the top and the index finger right there. Now I know that I've got the club correctly in my hand. And a lot of golfers, some instructors, they'll call this like the hinge mechanism. When the club is in the hands correctly, you're able to hinge it, all right? And so that's a good tip, easy for you to do. The second tip I want to give you on the grip has to do with the position of the top thumb. A lot of golfers have what I call a long thumb, where the thumb is extended. Now, there's lots of things I don't like about this. The main thing is that when they get to the top of the golf swing, the swing gets too long and the club head tends to drop. So we want what we call a short left thumb. So as I position the thumb, I want it to be short. Now what that does for you is when the club gets to the top, it becomes almost like a braking mechanism. It keeps the club head from falling at the top when the thumb is short. When the thumb is long, it tends to drop down. All right, so the first 2 key tips on the grip are, number 1, we've got to have it positioned so we can hinge it. We can test that just as I showed you, and then make sure you've got a short left thumb. So you're well on your way to doing that right there. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, be sure to ask a question in the comments. I always answer those. If you got a question on maybe what we're talking about there, maybe you heard something different, let's hear from you so that we can make sure we get those questions answered and you're holding the club correctly. Now the next thing we want to talk about is a key component in the setup. And this is, I'm not going to say this is controversial, because I do see a lot of people teach it, but it's pretty common to see the opposite. So here's what I'm talking about. When you're set up there, I want you to have some awareness of where it's going to feel like weight to you, but it's basically more like pressure is on your feet. Now a lot of amateur golfers, new golfers, start with a lot of their weight on their back foot because it gives them a sense that they're going to kind of lift the ball or power it up. What you want to do is you want to have some pressure on your lead foot. So you might have 60% or 55% pressure weight on your lead foot, maybe 45 or 40% on the trail foot. Now, why do we want you to do this, or why do I suggest that? Well, because to start the golf swing, you want what we call an unweighting. Okay, we want what we call an unweighting. What do I mean by that? Well, if I'm starting 60% here and I start to transition into my trail side, I can go from 60 and I can start to unweight, meaning I'm moving off my left side into my right heel. That allows me to do that because I've got 60 to work with. If you start your golf swing with 80% back, all right, that's an extreme example, I understand that, but 80% back, I can't create any momentum. I can't unweight. And all of a sudden I'm just here and I got to swing my arm. So the third tip that I'm giving you here has to do with the setup. And like I said earlier, I mean, I'm open. If you've heard something different, or maybe you think something different, be sure to let me know because we can talk about it. But my input to you is let's start 60, 40, and early in the golf swing, we're going to unweight a little bit so we have something to move into our right heel. So that would be the third tip that I would give you. Now, the next two have to do with the initial takeaway. And if you get the club moving away from the golf ball initially correctly, you're well on your way to making a good golf swing. So let's talk about one thing we can do with the body. And let's talk about one thing that we can do with the arm. So let's first of all talk about the body movement. So when you start the golf swing and when you initiate the movement, we already talked a little bit about this unweighting. I want you to feel like you're pivoting and turning into your right heel. All right, so from your angle there even, as I'm here, I'm turning, I feel like my right pocket almost works backwards. Okay, notice how I'm doing that. I see a lot of weekend golfers, new golfers, the first move they make is to shift their hip and they slide. That's just a dead giveaway to hitting some poor shots, all right? So you want to feel that you're pivoting and you're turning into your right hip, into your right heel, and as you're doing that, your trail leg, your right leg, is going to actually release just a little bit. All right, so tip number 4 is to turn into the hip, into the right heel versus sway or slide, and it really kind of ties in with the third tip I gave you initially about the setup about that 60-40. So you can kind of see how those two tie together. The last tip I want to talk about here, then I'm going to give you that drill, kind of tie all this together. And if you haven't ever subscribed to our channel, make sure you're doing that because we do provide great information on a regular basis, and we love hearing from you. We've done some great videos on from chipping to bunkers to driving, you name it. We're covering all kinds of stuff. So the 5th tip that I want to give you has to do with the arms and the club. All right. Now, when you move the club away from the golf ball, I want you to feel like your lead arm, I'll do it this way here to start. Your lead arm works a little bit into your chest. Okay, and also the club face, this is key right here, the club face stays what I'm going to call pretty square to maybe even slightly closed. Common mistake, and I guarantee somebody who's watching this, and maybe if you're the person, maybe you can make a comment and tell us you're the person who's doing that, but I guarantee somebody watching this video is the person who takes the club away, their lead arm goes out, away, and the face rotates. So the arm goes out, away, and the face rotates. And from that position, you're just dead in the water. So the 5th tip is lead arm works in, club face works squared up. All right, so those are the 5 tips that guaranteed, if you know those 5 tips, all right, you could probably, you could do my job, quite honestly. So let's recap them real quick, and then we're going to get to that drill. 2 things on the grip. We want to make sure we position the club in such a way that we can hinge it. We can check it by the little test I gave you there. Get the pad on the top, run it through the finger there, okay? The short left thumb, the short lead thumb, I should say. That was the second one that I gave you there. Then we talked about in the setup. Let's get a little bit of 60-40 so that we can unweight. We can get some momentum, some shifting working early. And then in the body motion, tip number 4, we're turning into the hip or into the right heel. And as we do that, the trail leg is releasing a little bit, all right? And then the 5th tip had to do with the arms and the club and the takeaway. We want the lead arm to work in, the club face is squared up, and I guarantee you, if you're doing those things right there, you're hitting some good golf shots. So I'll be curious to see out of those 5 tips, which one of them worked best for you in the comments there. So the last thing I want to share with you is this drill. And this is one that's been around for a long time. No big secret here, but it's one I give a lot early to people who are kind of learning the game and getting started, or people who come to the academy. And that is just to hit some shots off the lead foot only. So now when you first do this, I got an 8-iron here, so I would use like an 8-iron or a pitching wedge. All right, eventually you could maybe even do it with a longer club, but you're going to literally put the golf ball straight out from your lead foot. You're going to set in there. You can take your trail foot, which is for me is my right foot, and just kind of balance it a little bit. Set it right there and just hit some shots. Okay? And just swing the club. Now, what's going to happen when you do that is because of this position you're in on just a lead foot, your body's going to be forced to learn to pivot and to rotate versus drift. Because if you drift, you're going to fall over. And what I find is that if people start to pivot correctly early, a lot of things just start falling into place. So this is a wonderful drill. I even have my, a lot of my tour pros will do this. They'll do them off the lead foot. Some of them will do it off the trail foot, just to start to kind of get a feel for their body, how it's moving, and understanding some of the pivot mechanisms that are happening in the golf swing. So those are 5 key tips, 5 key suggestions for the average golfer, but quite frankly, they can work for any level of golfer. And so hopefully that helps your game out a little bit. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to comment. We want to hear from you. Be sure to follow us also on our social media on Twitter, and we're all the different places that we're at, because we love hearing from you. We love sharing information. And I look forward to the next time we're able to bring you more good things that are going to help you play better golf. All right. You bet. That was good, huh? Okay. Thanks. Let's see you, Nick. Yeah, I knew you were going to have it. All right, time out.